Does Eagles general manager Howie Roseman have another move up his sleeve to address a weakness on this Eagles roster? We're talking about that on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Thanks for hanging out here with me. Before we get started, if you're excited that Eagles football is back, training camp in full swing. We did our Eagles training camp winners and losers on yesterday's show. Preseason football getting underway next Friday. Eagles, Ravens, and I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. Here is the report that I want to center today's show on from Mike Clay, senior NFL writer for ESPN. And he tweeted this out, that the Eagles, among other teams, figured to be in the market for a number 3 wide receiver. And then he threw out some names as potential trade targets for Philadelphia. Some names I like, some names I don't, and we're going to run through all of them here. And these are potential trade targets or some potential signings for the Eagles in free agency if these players were to get released, because some of them figure to be on the roster bubble as you look ahead at 53-man roster cutdown day leading into week 1. David Bell, maybe Elijah Moore of the Cleveland Browns, John Mechie, Robert Woods of the Houston Texans, Miko Hardman of the Kansas City Chiefs, Juju SmithSchuster, and wait for it, Jalen Reagor of the New England Patriots, Allen Robinson or Isaiah Hodgins with the New York Giants, Danny Gray of the San Francisco 49ers, and Trayon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. We have talked about some of these players before here on the show, some fits that I'm a fan of, some fits that I don't really think make sense in Kellen Moore's scheme. But you think about the Eagles situation at the wide receiver 3 spot. Paris Campbell has had a solid training camp, a solid connection with Jalen Hurts. We know what he can bring to the table. A vertical burner who can run, he can fly, but he's never been able to stay healthy, and because of that, the production has been limited for the former second-round pick of the Indianapolis Colts out of Ohio State. John Ross, a first-round pick formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. He broke the NFL Combine record for the fastest 40-yard dash, which held up until Xavier Worthy back in March when we were at the NFL Combine doing coverage here on the show, broke that record by running a 4.21 40-yard dash. He, like Paris Campbell, has that vertical speed to take the lid off of the defense, but he, too, has always been injured. Britton Covey was one of my training camp winners. He's been one of the best punt returners in the NFL over the last year and a half, but he's started to get some more reps as a wide receiver, and he talked about how he's looked at tape of players like Cole Beasley, and he doesn't look at tape of players like DK Metcalf because at 5'8", smaller in stature, he can't compare his game to a player like DK Metcalf. So he studied some slot receivers, and he told me during that interview that we did in Las Vegas in the lead up to the Super Bowl that he'd love to get some more offensive opportunities on top of him just being a specialist as a returner. And you think about him, I think he's an intriguing option out of the slot, that possession type of slot wide receiver who's shifty and has a little bit of wiggle to win in short areas. And then I don't think that Johnny Wilson and Ainias Smith are realistic options to be a wide receiver 3 this year. Ainias Smith has struggled with punt drops. He's coming off an injury, didn't partake in the practices in the spring. And Johnny Wilson's raw, tallest wide receiver in the NFL, but he needs to refine his skill set. So which of those Eagles trade targets or post-release targets make sense for Philadelphia and offer the best fit? Let's break it down here. So the first name mentioned by Mike Clay was David Bell, 23 years old, third-round pick out of Purdue back in 2022. I really liked his game coming out of college. He was a consensus first-team All-American during his final season with the Boilermakers, when that year he had 93 catches for nearly 1,300 yards and 6 touchdowns, a shifty, versatile playmaker who has good size, but at 6'1", 212, doesn't run all that fast. 4.65 40-yard dash in the pre-draft process, but he is very creative with how he can make people miss and pick up yards after the catch. That's a special component to his game. Now, his production with Cleveland, albeit in a good wide receiver room, has been very, very limited, but if you were to bring him in, you can use him as a versatile weapon and get creative by finding ways to get him the football. As for John Mechie and Robert Woods, both of the Houston Texans, I think that Mechie might be my favorite player on this list because of what he can bring to this Eagles offense. a young player who's still tapping into his potential, hasn't really been able to display what he can do because he missed his rookie year due to a diagnosis of leukemia. He came back from that, and then last year, he stuck behind a loaded Texans depth chart at the wide receiver position where in front of him, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and then the Texans this offseason, they traded for Stephon Diggs, and they have Robert Woods on the team. So is there a spot for John Mechie on that team to even get snaps? And if not, I think that Philadelphia could pull off the trade for him, and it wouldn't be all that expensive because what leverage does Houston have? They don't have a lot of leverage because that wide receiver room is so deep with some really talented players. Diggs, Dell, and Collins, really good wide receiver trio for CJ Stroud, as the Texans have really bulked up that roster. They've spent a lot of money trying to take advantage of CJ Stroud being on that rookie contract. And with Mechie, vertical weapon, he's fast, he has good size, so I think that he can become more of an all-around wide receiver as compared to some of the specialists on this list, and his production at Alabama, where he does have continuity and familiarity with Devontae Smith, was terrific. Robert Woods, not much to say about him. He's an older player who's close to being washed if he isn't already. He's 32 years old, hasn't had solid production in a few years now. Miko Hardman, fast and shifty, been utilized very well by Andy Reid in Kansas City for Patrick Mahomes. Signed with the Jets going into the 2023 season. It didn't work out. Targets were down, production was down, usage was down. Now, Aaron Rodgers went down 4 plays into the season, but even though they had bad quarterback play, it just wasn't a good fit for Hardman. Then he goes back to Kansas City, has the game-winning catch in the Super Bowl. So a fast, shifty, nimble gadget weapon. He is not that all-around wide receiver that I think John Mechie can be, but at this point, you kind of know what you're getting with him. Juju Smith-Schuster and Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor, no way. I am still scarred by the fact that Howie Roseman took him over the likes of Justin Jefferson and Brandon Ayuk, a complete bust who never had what it takes to be a successful athlete in Philadelphia. Mentally fickle. I don't like the game. He played small. The physicality that he had as far as his sturdy body frame never really translated, and he never even made an imprint as a returner in this league. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, you know, TikTok sensation, right? He's had really good production in this league. When he was behind Antonio Brown with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he had some really good years, and it looked as though he was on this trajectory to being a really good player in this league. And it's not to take anything away from what he's been able to do. Some people at that time thought that he could be a number one. The Pittsburgh Steelers never thought that he had the makeup to be a number one wide receiver in this league. That's turned out to be true over time. He was really good with Kansas City during the Super Bowl year. We know what happened with the James Bradbury hold, or did he not hold? Shouldn't have been called in that situation. He goes to New England. Last year he was injured, bothersome knee injury, some medical red flags there. Allen Robinson, great player at Penn State, some really good years in the NFL, Jacksonville, Chicago. I can't believe he's still playing. And Isaiah Hodgins, he can be a productive player as a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 4, but there are better players on this list. Danny Gray, former JUCO guy, he went to SMU, third-round pick by the San Francisco 49ers a couple of years ago, hasn't been able to see the field, partially because the Niners have been stacked at the wide receiver spot. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Jawan Jennings, and then offensively, obviously, they have George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. Danny Gray hasn't been able to see the field. He has had a pretty good training camp this summer so far. I want to see what happens when the pads come on. Really, his only highlight as an NFL player a couple of preseasons ago as a rookie when he caught a long ball from Trey Lance, who's been stinking up the joint for the Dallas Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? No fans, by the way, showing up to Cowboys training camp because they're down bad because that team continues to be a disappointment. But Danny Gray, up to this point, 1 catch in his NFL career. But that 4.3 speed, you take a chance on a player with a little bit of pedigree, you hope that it works out, and you have that Quez Watkins type of replacement in the sense that he can be that vertical player to take the top off of the defense. And as we know, Quez Watkins, very disappointing for Philadelphia. He was a training camp star, never translated to actual games. Lastly, Trayon Burks. He's Deebo Samuel light to me. At least that's what my player comp was for him coming out of Arkansas when he did everything. Inside, outside, gadget player, jet sweeps, reverses, bubble screens, able to catch the long ball. I thought that he was going to be a really good pro. So far, he hasn't been. I think there's a better player in there, though, than what he's been able to show. With Tennessee, he's been injured. He came to rookie minicamp out of shape. He's had bad quarterback play, bad offensive scheme. I think that there's a better player in there, and as we know, the Eagles have taken chances on players who are former first, second, and third round picks because they believe in their player development program, and I think that on this team, Trayon Burks could be a problem alongside A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So a lot of different prototypes on that list, and we round out today's show with this poll question. Of those wide receivers, who do you like the most for Philadelphia to target at wide receiver 3? Or do you like where they're situated right now with Paris Campbell, John Ross, Britton Covey, and others? Let me know down in the comment section. Thanks for watching. I'm in Maine right now. I'll be here till next Tuesday. Back in the studio Wednesday. Watch party on Friday. Eagles, Ravens. Can't wait for it.